Well, hello YouTube and welcome back to my channel. I'm Patty. I go by Pattymac Makes everywhere online. And thanks for dropping by. It's really good to see you again. So what are we looking at? We are looking at the pieced, almost completed Power of 3 quilt. And what I have done is 5 different blocks, 4 blocks for each row. So it's a total of 20 different blocks. And to finish this quilt off, I want to put a border on it. If I'm being honest, I wanted to do a double border, but I didn't have quite enough fabric for that. So today we are improvising just a little bit, and I'm going to show you how I put the border onto the quilt. Now this is a smaller size of a quilt. It's a little bit large for a twin size, but it's not quite big enough for a full size. Now if you did like a super wide border, which is what I wanted to do, you could then have this comfortably go onto a full size bed. But since I am a little bit low on fabric, I'm using what I have. I'm making the best out of what I have. So I will be putting on a border that is 5.5 inches. So it'll be roughly a 5-inch border when it's sewn on and the bindings on and all of that. I have one part of the border sewn together, and I'm going to show you how I set up to put those together, because you cut your strips on the width of fabric, and what you will find is that the width of fabric is not long enough to cover or extend the full length of any one of these 4 sides. So you have to join the strips that you cut together. And I do them on the bias the same way that we would do when we're making quilt binding. So anyway, I'll just show you that. You can see this is not a fancy setup. This is my living room floor. Now I am very lucky that I get to have this whole room to work in. So that is a huge blessing. When I work, I just vacuum. I keep my carpet really clean anyway, then I vacuum it, and I just lay my work out. So I've got one strip of border prepared, and what I'm going to do at this point is I'm going to walk into the frame, and I'm just going to attach it onto the quilt. I'll let you see me do that. I'll just sew it off camera. It's nothing more than a 1/4 inch seam like normal. I'll press it out, and then I'll come back and lay it out again and let you see it with the one strip of border on, and then I'll show you how I actually put those border strips together to make them long enough. And yeah, it's a pretty simple process, and yeah, let's jump in and get the first strip on. Now when I do my border, I always do top and bottom, or what they call north and south. So I will first put the border onto the top and get it all nice and trimmed and ready to go and pressed out, and then I'll come back and we'll put the strip on the bottom, the southern border. So we'll do the northern border first, and then we'll come back and do the south border. Okay. Without any further ado, let's get the first strip onto the quilt. So here we are, and I'm attaching this pieced border strip to the top of my quilt top. And I'm just using pins, and I'm just very carefully making my way across the strip, making sure that those edges are aligned and taking my time. And you can see that on this strip right there is the seam where I've joined 2 width of fabric cuts. So when you make your border, you're going to do width of fabric, you're going to join along the 45, and you can see it's a little bit long. That's fine. I'm putting it on, and then I'll just trim it to fit the size that I need. Okay, that top strip is on the quilt, and the next thing we'll do is put on the bottom one. But what we're going to do is join 2 strips together, and I'll show you how I did that. And then for this quilt, I want to do cornerstones again in the border. So there's going to be 5.5-inch squares that will be in each of the 4 corners. So for the side strips, what we'll want to do is join the 2 together, the 2 with the fabric strips, join 2 together so it's long enough, and then we'll have to trim an end and put on the gold, and then we'll finagle it and get the other end just so, because it is difficult to measure correctly when you're dealing with large projects like this. So we're just going to finagle it a little bit, and I'll show you how I do that. So, okay, let me change the angle a little bit, and I'm going to move you over to the work table, and I'll show you how I put the whole the strips together. Okay, we're over here, and we're looking at my cutting table, and we're just going to open up the strip. And we know that we want to join 2 of them together, and what I'm going to do, and let me move it over where you can really see what I'm doing. But right here. So what I'm doing is I'm lining up with the line on the mat so that I know that it's straight. And then I'm going to take the second one, and you want to put your fabrics right sides together. This is really important. And what I'm going to do next is I'm going to work on this line perpendicular. And I'm just going to get it as close as I can with the selvage not on the print. So the selvage is going to be sticking out over the top of your fabric, and then we'll just put a little bit of a weight on there. And then what we're going to do is draw a line, and our line is going to go from upper left to lower right. And I have talked before about this triangle ruler. I love this thing. I use it all the time. It's not what it's intended for, but it sure does work for a lot of different things. So I'm just going to draw that line, and then I'm going to pin, and you definitely want to make sure you pin on this side. Okay? And then we'll pin over here. Okay, and then what we're going to do is go over to the sewing machine, and I'm going to sew on that line. So let me do that, and I'll be right back, and I'll show you what we're going to do next. Okay, we're back. So we just have that line right there. I hope you can see that. And then we'll take our pins out. Now, just to make sure I did it right, I'm going to just open up and make sure, and everything works. It's really easy to get turned around on this, and like sew a right side to a wrong side. So check before you cut. Okay, and then on this particular quilt roller, it has like a really well marked 1/4 inch seam or a line measurement, and I'm just going to cut the seam allowance, and then when you open it, you get a beautiful bias join. And what I'll do is take this to the ironing board. I'm going to press it, and I'm going to press that seam open so it's really flat. But when you join on the bias as opposed to the 45, you get such a beautiful join, and it blends in so much better. It's like you can't see it. Whereas if you just do a straight seam, it will show every time. It's the craziest thing. Like, I'm looking where I put that border on the top. I can't see anything. I don't know where the seam is. So it's very interesting how that works. But anyway, this is also how we join our fabrics when we're doing binding. So that's your 45 bias. All right, let me just press this and I'll show you that. It's not exciting, but I'll get it pressed and show it to you. Okay, it's all pressed out. And you might want to take off this little dog ears. Just nip this off. But, gosh, it's just a beautiful seam. I don't even know if you can see that on camera. It joins so well. And I have done really busy prints even like this, and it comes out gorgeous. Now you do wind up with some waste, and if you like to save all of your scraps, you can certainly save your scraps. Okay, so the next step is I'm going to get that onto the bottom, and it's the same process as what we did with the top. So I'll just do that off camera. Before we go to that, let me show you how we're going to make the piece for the side. So that one's going to need a little bit of finesse. So we're going to do a couple of things here. We're going to line it up again on the mat and use the lines, and I'm going to cut that selvage. Okay, and then I'm going to take one of my squares, and I'm using the gold for my corner, so I'm just going to go ahead and put that on. And I think the first thing I'm going to do is piece this on so it's on the strip. And then what I'm going to do is the same procedure as we did for the other one. Draw our line, and you're just going from corner to corner, intersection to intersection, I guess I should say. Okay, just like that. And then pin, and you want to definitely make sure you pin on this side, the inside of the work, because this is really what you're attaching to. And then we can do this one. And this is kind of a big piece, so if we want, we could actually do another pin at the bottom. Okay, so here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to go to the sewing machine, and I'm going to sew on that line. I'm going to trim it and prep it just like I did the other piece. And then, whoops, I'll come back. Oh, and I'm also going to sew on the gold. So we'll have one gold square. And then I'm going to go ahead and put the south border onto the quilt. And when all of that's done, I'm going to come back on with you, and I'll show you how we'll put on the side piece. Okay? Stick around. Okay, I've got the north and south borders on, and I have the west border piece laying in place. And as I mentioned to you, I sewed on one of the cornerstone blocks, and you can see up in the upper left hand corner. It's not a great angle on the camera, but it's what I have right now. So anyway, all the way up in that corner there, that's sewn on. And then what I've done is laid the strip to the side of the quilt, and I have just at this lower piece down here, all I've done is lay it in place. And I'm going to do something that I'm assuming the quilt police would lose their minds over, but what I'm going to do is go down there and sort of guesstimate slightly the correct length, and then I'm going to just trim with scissors and sew that gold cornerstone onto that long strip. and then that long piece is going to be placed onto that side of the quilt. And then I'm going to do the same thing on the right side, or the east border. And once all of that's on, my quilt top is finished. So I'm going to let you watch me do what I'm going to do, which if the police are giving tickets today, I'm going to get a ticket for this, but you know, it'll just be our little secret. Don't tell them I did this. Okay. All right, I'm going to just walk into the shot and show you what I'm going to do. Okay, so I have the cut started, so I know where to trim. So what I'm going to do is trim it square on the cutting mat, and then piece the other cornerstone on, and it's going to go onto the quilt. And then I'm going to do exactly the same thing on the other side. And when all of that's done, I'll come back and show you how it looks. All right, my friends, it is the next morning. I ran out of light last night getting on the right side, or the east side border, but I got it done, and I think it's beautiful. So I just wanted to show you the finished product, and I'll tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to film some close-ups so that you can see where all the corners meet, and I'll show you where it's imperfect, because I think it's important to show that as well, because from here, does it matter? I don't think it matters. And you know, once everything's put together and it's quilted and I'm using it, it really doesn't matter, because I just love how it came out. I'm admiring it as we speak. So anyway, yeah, I use some unconventional ways of putting things together, and you know, honestly, when you're dealing with something this large, it's really hard to get those measurements just right, especially on the long sides. So for me, just kind of getting that one end on, if I'm doing the cornerstone. Now, if I wasn't hard-headed and didn't put those cornerstones, then it would just be long strips. I would just put them on and trim them off. It would be super easy. But you know, I like a little bit of a challenge, so, and I do feel like it adds a lot. So I went ahead and did the large cornerstones as that additional challenge. So yeah, let's just take a closer look, and I'll show you where, you know, it's not perfect. Yeah, so down in the corner where I showed you that I demonstrated, I should say, where the corner would come in, it's not quite right. It's off a little bit. I would say it's off by maybe 1/8 of an inch, but personally, I'm fine about that. You know, for me, done is better than perfect. And as I've said to you numerous times, I do this for enjoyment, not just to, it's not an exercise in perfection for me. It's, you know, it's joyful and it's fun. If you look closer, you can see that I made a bit of an error in the blocks on the bottom. I was still kind of playing around with that finished design, and yeah, I've made like 3 versions of it now. So there's, and I like them all. So yeah, that stair step block has a lot of easy ways to make variations. So we'll just have to do a blog post with all 3 of those patterns so that you can play with those. And I'll have to pop them into their own full-sized quilt design and see what they look like. But that's another topic. So anyway, let's just kind of look at that corner, and you can see it's not perfect. But, you know, I think in the grand scheme of things, it's fine. All of the other corners are pretty much right on the money, so I'm super happy about that. And yeah, that's where we are. The next step in the process is to prepare the quilt sandwich. And I'm going to show you how I do that. It's not glamorous, you know, it's on the floor. I'll just give you a spoiler alert. But, you know, for those of us who are working at home and don't have a huge workshop, this is how you do it. And I wanted you to see that. So, all right, that is today's video. I think that's all we need to say about borders. They definitely add a lot to your quilt. And, you know, I had some ideas of what to do, but I liked, in the end, the blue on the outside. I thought it just encapsulated the design and the, you know, the meat of the quilt the best. And I will say also that if you make something like this with the row quilt, it's super easy to customize it. So if you wanted it larger, you could just add one more block to each row, and that would give you like another 14 inches easily. So if you wanted to size this larger, very easy to do that. You can also do a much wider border, which in all honesty was my plan, but I didn't have enough fabric. So there was that. And I haven't seen it in Joann. So anyway, that's why I have what I have, but I'm really happy with it. And looking forward to getting it all done. Okay, I'm rambling. That's it. Stick around for the next version, which is setting up the quilt sandwich. And I'll give you a little bit of footage of me doing the quilting and how I'm going to do the quilting. And then we'll put the binding on it, and I'll show you how I'm doing that. And then it's done. It's finally done. Hooray! Okay, that's it. I hope that you are coming along well with your power of 3. If this is your first time seeing this particular quilt, you can go back to the beginning and just start. You can make this at any time. And it's in weekly step-by-step instructions. When everything's all said and done on this, I will have a version of it as a download through my Etsy shop. So that will be coming. All the instructions in one place. Okay, that's it for today. Thank you as always for watching. I really appreciate it. I appreciate you. And I'll see you in the next video.